Hey, how's it going, everyone? So, another week of this coronavirus, and the more and more I go down the rabbit hole, so to speak, and the more I research, the more questions I have. And with someone such as myself, if things don't quite make sense or I smell a rat, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, I just like to have hard scientific data. And I don't trust the mainstream media, and neither should you. So I found a video, and I'll put the link of that video in the description box, but I also, depending on what option you want to choose, I basically wrote out or typed out what the guy said in the video, with the exception of like about the last like 2 minutes of the video, and I condensed that part. So there's no political affiliation, there's no political agenda. Take what you want from it, but essentially this corona virus is not being handled the way it should, according to this microbiologist, and I wholeheartedly agree. So before you click away, you should definitely listen and try to have an open mind, because what the mainstream media is telling you is something different, and that's for another video. So this guy's name is Dr. Sucharit Bhakdi. I'll probably comment a little bit in between or just read it all the way. It's an open letter to the Chancellor of Germany, and I did have to translate it, so it's not going to be exactly perfect. I am a medical microbiologist. This is Dr. Bhakdi. I am a medical microbiologist and infectious disease epidemiologist who served for 22 years. It's getting a little hot. Who served as 22 years as a chairman of the Institute of Medical Microbiology in Mainz Hygiene University. My life has been devoted to researching the pathogenesis, diagnosis, and therapy of infectious diseases. 9 days ago, I uploaded the first video to address the COVID-19 debate that is raging worldwide. My intent was to channel the heated discussions back and down to a sound scientific basis for the sake of the entire community in this country. He's in Germany. I share no political agenda, I pursue no personal interest, and no interest of any third party. The only reason for this video is the obligation to serve science and our community. And based on the video, my gut feeling is usually pretty right on. The decisive question is, do we know enough to justify the massive measures that violate human rights in our free democratic society with all their predictable consequences? And if so, on which data are these decisions based on? Which strategies have been construed? I have now written an open letter to the Chancellor of Germany addressing the 5 most pressing questions, open questions. In this video, I will explain the reasons underlying these questions that are of vital importance to us. This guy's in Germany, but this applies to the whole world. My first question considers statistics. In our field, it has always been elementary to differentiate between infection, that is the entry and multiplication of an infectious agent, and disease or illness, a la appearance of clinical symptoms. In the case of corona, this would be cough and perhaps fever. So once again, I'll backtrack just so there's a lot of information in here. You need to differentiate between just having an infection. That would be someone who's just asymptomatic. You get the virus, it's in you, but you don't have any signs. That's infection. That's different from disease, having side effects such as cough and a fever, like you said. Anyway, let's say, in other words, a new infection diagnosed by a laboratory test must not be equated with illness or with a patient who requires medical treatment. It is claimed that 5% of infected individuals will end up in ICUs and require artificial ventilation. The ensuing prognosis predicts Germany's health system will be driven to its utter limits. But his question to the Chancellor was, did your projections differentiate between only slightly affected individuals compared to severely ill and hospitalized COVID-19 patients? He says, dear fellow citizens, the implicit danger of equating infections with patient numbers must be obvious. The daily numbers of registered infections is indeed exponential. but they cannot serve as a reliable basis for any calculations on the possible burden on medical care. Rather, we need numbers of genuine clinically relevant COVID-19 cases in order to arrive at any sensible prediction. And real quick, this is the argument that they say, like I initially, before even doing more research, had stated that we should just maybe quarantine the high-risk people and let everyone just go about their business. And then the number one argument is that I knew my gut feeling was correct. The number one argument was that it would overhaul the healthcare system. The problem with that logic, like he stated, is that just because you get infected with it, the majority are not going to show symptoms and they're going to recover from it. So they're not even going to have to go to the hospital. It's the ones with prior conditions. But let's just keep going. The second question relates to the true danger of the virus. Implementation of the current draconian measures that so extremely restrict fundamental rights can only be justified if there is a reason to fear that a truly exceptionally dangerous virus is threatening us. Do any scientifically sound data exist to support this contention for COVID-19? I assert that the answer is simply no. To gauge the true danger of the virus, what is the type of data we need? He asks. There are common viruses that we live with every day, the common everyday flu, cold. Then there's the COVID-19 corona. What we need are, say, 10,000 patients, all with respiratory tract disease, that are infected with a common virus or flu. Then you need another 10,000 infected with just the COVID-19, all with respiratory tract disease, nothing else. So he wants two sample sizes, 10,000, 10,000. Both of them have respiratory pre-existing conditions, but one of them has just regular flu and one has just the COVID-19 only, but they both have respiratory issues, A and B. Then we need to ask, Then we need to ask how many die in this group and how many in that group. If the mortality is similar in both, then clearly they are similarly dangerous or less dangerous. If the numbers here are higher than this one, then obviously the virus is more dangerous. If the number is much higher, okay, I already said that, sorry. You will ask me, has there been such a study? Has a study been done on this? And his answer was no. Until March 19, 2020, when the first study ever appeared from our French colleagues that addressed this central question, what do you think they reported? What do you guys think? The mortality in both groups was similar. The COVID-19 did not differ in dangerousness from its everyday relatives. It's virtually the same as just getting the flu. My second question to the Chancellor, how many patients with established genuine COVID-19 patients are currently being treated in ICUs, and how does that number compare with patients infected with everyday flu viruses? If this data being considered as present and future prevention strategies and have the data for our French colleagues receive attention in all this important context, dear fellow citizens, I say not that the COVID-19 is as trivial as everyday flu viruses. He's not downplaying it. But I do assert that nothing points to the probability that this is much more dangerous, for instance, its alarming predecessors, SARS or MERS, that were really deadly. Or like the flu virus that plagued the world 2 years ago that was 50 to 100 times more deadly than annual flu viruses, which this year has caused over 300 deaths. 2 years ago, we were horrified at more than 20,000 flu deaths in Germany, and yet no stringent preventative measures were implemented at all. And that was correct and reasonable. Because our healthcare system is equipped to deal with such emergencies, and we have really good doctors and helpers that immediately stand up to master such situations, there is no reason to panic. Now imagine that COVID-19 will and has actually already been exposed as a virus with perhaps somewhat but never ever extremely higher deadly potency than everyday viruses. Then, dear fellow citizens, incredible but true, the framework for all preventative measures instantly collapses like a house of cards. Almost there, guys. My third question related to the spread of the virus in the general healthy population. The third question relates to the spread of the virus in the general healthy population, such as myself. We urgently need to know whether the virus has already spread to the general population, because should this be the case, any attempts to halt it further spread would obviously be senseless. My question to the Chancellor: has any attempt been initiated to answer this question? Dear fellow citizens, a representative investigation of our community could be performed within 1 to 2 weeks, and we would then know. My fourth question relates to the true mortality rates of the virus, with special reference to Italy and Spain. Now, this part's very, very important. This is what I've been saying for a while. In my conviction that the terrible error made in the entire world is that whenever the virus is detected in a deceased person, it is automatically assigned as the cause of death and enters the awful list of the corona dead. This violates a basic principle in medicine. This violates it. It simply must be established that a patient dies because of the virus and not simply with the virus. I repeat, it simply must be established that a patient dies because of the virus and not simply with the virus. Just because you have it doesn't mean you died from it. This is explicitly stated in the German medical guidelines, which are, however, not used in the case of COVID-19. My question to the Chancellor: has Germany simply followed the global trend of unscientifically categorizing and defining COVID-19 related deaths? It's happening in the US. And does Germany intend to continue breaking the established rules? How then can you ever hope to differentiate between a virus as the cause of death and virus accidentally present at death? They're not differentiated between the deaths. They're just racking it up as a COVID. Oh, it's present in there, it's COVID. Real quick, it's like if their agenda was to get people to get off heroin or cocaine, what would they do? They would drive home on the media all the deaths of cocaine overdose. All the heroin overdoses, right? They would keep pumping it in you if they want to if they want to scare you, right? But what they don't realize is what? A lot of people mix drugs. So yes, a person could have OD'd from heroin, and they would call it, let's just make something up. Let's call it the heroin 2020 epidemic. And if they wanted to do that, they would do that. They would just rack up all the heroin cases, even if the person had a fraction of heroin. But what they don't even probably will tell you is the person had some other drugs in their system. They mixed it with alcohol. They mixed it with this. They had a prior heart condition. It's very, very complicated. It's not black and white. But they don't want to tell you that. Similarly with this type of stuff. There's a small trace of a virus of COVID-19. They have a plethora of other issues. The majority of them have respiratory issues. And according to this guy, without the COVID, they would probably, it's sad, and I don't make it downplay it, but they would, based on percentages, these types of people that died from COVID are probably going to just die from the regular flu anyway. My last question queries the compatibility of the situation in Italy and Germany, because the terrible reports from Italy and in these days also from Spain are frequently extrapolated to warn of a possible similar situation that threatens this country. However, the true significance of COVID-19 in Italy can simply not be assessed. In addition to the problems we have addressed above, the additional factors such as horrific air pollution in North Italy and the ailing Italian health system may be playing unpredictable roles. And now, dear fellow citizens, I submit a new thought for your consideration. We know that the virus is extremely infectious, but reflect, the virus has probably already spread far beyond your estimates. Sorry. It may be present in a considerable part of the healthy Italian, Spanish, and also German population. How probable is it that when bedridden elderly patients are visited by their beloved friends and family, the virus is passed on to them as our other everyday flu viruses? It's likely high. When then the patients enter the hospital, the virus is immediately detected, or if they succumb to their true disease at home, the virus is sought and found post-mortem. A trivial event, but with indescribable consequences because of false interpretation. I say it once again, the simple and trivial presence of the virus must never, ever qualify it to enter the register of COVID deaths. And then I condensed the rest. He went on to state that reports from Italy, the high death count should not become the basis of our own measures. Obviously, the median age in Italy is higher, poorer air quality, also in China, more smokers. So you can't. It's apples and oranges. Also, why aren't we telling people that it's not just COVID-19 that's causing the higher death rates? Informing the public would calm people down, he wanted to say. Him, along with other world-renowned experts in the field, Professor Loanis, feels the same. He also speaks about the implementation of lockdowns and if they are legally justified and if they infringe upon our human rights, which I'll probably get to in another video. He closes the statement stating that, quote, "Let us strive to follow in the path of prognosis and assemble knowledge and truth in a collective effort to master this terrible crisis." So you know, that's pretty much how it goes. I know these videos are a little bit long, but it's something that has to be said. Just it's a lot of information. So I think what we're getting at in a nutshell is they're not different. Anything that has a trace of COVID, they're chalking it up and putting it on the data and scaring more people, rather than taking the scientific approach. And this is a problem because what's it doing to our world economy, our U.S. economy, entire world? It's decimating it. This doesn't mean I don't care about deaths, but the science backs it up and it just doesn't make sense. It may be more contagious, but the majority of people, and that was my inkling, the majority of people are going to recover from it. And the ones that don't, they are chalked up as COVID-19 deaths. But once again, according to the microbiologist, the expert, it's not just COVID. They have it. They just, if you have a trace of it, they just say it was from a COVID death, so they could rack up the numbers. Why? What is their end game? This is 17 minutes, so I'm not sure. But government control, a little bit of an experiment. Do 2 weeks of fear mongering. That's all it took, and everyone just bowed down. You're giving up your human rights for this. If you want to think I'm insensitive about it, I'm not. I work on the front line of healthcare, and I care about my patients. But this is getting ridiculous. Don't be. It's already happening. Don't be surprised if you feel like your rights are being infringed upon. With it could be martial law, where military can take over natural law and regular law, and they'll come and they'll just start questioning you. People have done that. It hasn't happened to me yet, but you could literally be driving and they'll just pull you over and harass you and ask you, where are you going to work? And they don't even trust your citizens. So that's it. I got to do that for another video. So that's it. Let me know what you guys and gals think. Talk to you later. Bye.